turn your attention to a hearing that Judge Newman had about the alternate who was dismissed, sometimes called the egg juror. Do you recall that hearing?
Yes, ma'am.
In the hearing, Judge Newman expressed his unhappiness with you for questioning that juror before he questioned her. Do you recall that?
I do remember seeing that.
Well, then let's go back and talk about that juror. On examination in this courtroom, you said that she talked about a lot of things to you, but you didn't ask her any questions. But that's not completely accurate, is it?
Yes, ma'am, that is true.
Well, you asked her direct questions, and that came out in the hearing that Judge Newman had. You asked her questions before she was even examined by the judge, did you not?
Your Honor, I did not ask her any questions.
The juror was examined by the judge in a hearing. Do you recall that hearing? It's the second hearing on this matter.
I do recall that hearing, yes.
And the court asked you about, the court asked this juror about postings on Facebook, did he not?
Correct.
And the juror said she gave Miss Becky my full access to my Facebook. And I put positive posts on it. I've done that for the past 3 years. Do you recall her testifying in that regard?
I do remember reading that.
And the judge said, has anyone posted anything on Facebook about you? And the juror answered, I was not aware of it until Miss Becky told me today. Do you recall that?
I do remember her saying that.
And do you recall the judge saying, what did she tell me? And the juror said, she asked me if I had an ex-husband, and I said, yeah. Did you ask her that?
I remember her saying this, Your Honor, but I did not ask her any of these questions.
And she further says, she asked me if I had talked to him about the case or being on jury duty, and I said no. I had questioned her about why she was asking me that. I haven't seen my husband since 2014. Do you recall her testifying to that?
I do remember that, yes.
And with that having jarred your memory, do you recall asking her about her husband and his post?
Your Honor, I don't remember saying anything about that.
Well, what was the post that you read in the Walterboro Word of Mouth? What was the nature? You read that, did you not?
I did.
What did it say?
My memory is a little fuzzy with that, but it was about an ex-husband who found out that his ex-wife was on a jury, and he didn't think that she would be a good juror, and it just sounded very similar to what I had heard the judge and the attorneys speaking
So
about.
you then went to that juror and questioned her about that, did you not?
I did not, Your Honor.
Well, she says in this testimony that she didn't know about the Facebook until Miss Becky told me. Was that incorrect?
I'm not
Some
saying...
some kind of conversation went between the two of her for her to know about that post, correct?
That's true. And I'm thinking that it could have been someone, it wasn't me. I just know that it's not me that she talked to about that.
Well, when the judge, the judge was questioning the juror about this, she also said that she had 3 restraining orders against him. And she also said, I was very upset after she told me that. Like I said, I have 3 restraining orders against him, and I wouldn't have anything to do with him if I didn't have a child with him. But I haven't seen him since 2014. Y'all didn't discuss that, the restraining orders?
On the way from the jury room to the back chambers where the judge was, she was very scared. She was talking about the 3 restraining orders that she had out on her husband at the time that they were divorcing, and she was scared that he would be trying to get back in contact with her again.
Well, how do you know that? Did she tell you that?
She was talking about that on the way to the jury room, to the chambers with the judge.
And in the court, in this hearing now that I'm looking at, that the court is conducting, she said, they're asking about this Facebook post, and she said, Miss Becky said she went to look for the post again and that it had been deleted. I don't know who she talked to or anything else, but she said apparently, do you recall her saying that?
I do remember her saying that.
And the court then said, what did she tell you about that? And the juror said, it was after you let us go on the last break. I was very upset. This is what you're talking about. And she came down and talked to me and said that apparently, I don't know who talked to him, but he said he was drunk and he removed the post. Do you recall that?
Well, she didn't tell me that, and I didn't talk with her about that.
Well, you saw that post, the so-called apology post, did you not?
Right, I did.
And you assumed that was a post from her husband, did you not?
Right.
And then you talked to the juror about that, did you not?
I did not talk with the juror about that.
Well, who did you talk to about it? Did you bring it to the judge's attention?
No, we didn't get a chance to talk to the judge about that.
The court asked this juror, has the clerk discussed anything about the case with anyone on the jury? The juror said, not that I'm aware of. The judge said, okay, she was just discussing with juror. She pulled me aside when we went downstairs after the last break. I want to say it was after lunch, and we came back, and that's when she first told me about it, about this, what we now know was not a post from her husband.
Right.
But you assumed it was a post at the time, and y'all had a conversation about it, correct? Don't that just nod? Answer the question.
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. I believe that it was one of my staff that she talked to, but it was not me that she talked to.
But the juror says, and I want to say it was after lunch we came back, and that's when she first told me about it. She's talking about you.
Correct.
Then we went back into the court, and I never even got to sit on the jury. The judge says, the judge then stops the questioning and she exits the room. Mr. Griffin, Your Honor, I think that satisfies it. She hadn't talked to anybody, hadn't expressed an opinion, hadn't made up an opinion. She's got an ex-husband and she has 3 restraining orders against him. The court said, Mr. Waters, just obviously we're all invested in this. My main concern, I certainly would love to, but not love to, but would want to hear, what one of these individuals said. But, she answered the questions as she did, talking about the juror. They then have a colloquy about this juror and whether this was really her husband that put this post in that you talked to her about and apparently talked with the court about at some point. Am I right?
That's right.
And then at the end, the judge said that he was not too happy with your having talked to the juror before you talked to him. Do you recall the judge saying that?
Yes, ma'am, I do.
And did you pop right up there and say what you're saying now, that you never talked to her?
We never talked about it after that. I wasn't in the room when he said that.
The judge brought up another thing right after sentencing that I want to explore with you briefly.
Okay.
One of the big responsibilities of the clerk of court is to take control of the exhibits that are presented in court. Isn't that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And there were sealed exhibits presented in this case that were photographs of the two decedents at Moselle when the law enforcement authorities first investigated the murders. You recall that?
Yes, ma'am.
And those photographs were sealed by the judge, were they not?
Correct.
And when the testimony about them was completed, they were under your control as the clerk of court, were they not?
That's correct.
How was it that those photographs came into public view?
Are you talking about after the...
I'm talking about the fact he alluded to it on sentencing and said that he was frustrated about it and was going to try to look into it. Those photographs that were sealed court exhibits under your control found their way into the public media, did they not?
I believe they did. And I think what happened, it was someone from the gallery took a picture from a screen that had some of the pictures on it, if I'm remembering correctly.
Did you ever allow anyone from the press to view these sealed exhibits?
No, ma'am.
Did you allow Netflix to ever examine the exhibits for trial?
No, ma'am.
How did you handle exhibits? Because you did have the press have great access to the exhibits, and you say several times in your book that you had to stay after to be sure that you interacted with the press about these exhibits. That's true, is it not?
That is true. We had Mr. Jay Bender, and then we had the pool photographers and someone from maybe the state, I believe, or the Posting Courier, along with the court reporters, someone from court administration, and then someone from the clerk's office every night that would go over the exhibits to make sure everything was correct and within our domain.
Were any press people ever allowed to view the exhibits, even the sealed exhibits that you had on file?
No, ma'am. No, ma'am.
What was the methodology for allowing them to examine the exhibits? How'd you handle that?
I wasn't there a whole lot when we did this every night, but it's my understanding that the people that were involved with the exhibits, and especially the court reporters, and there was a certain time frame that they were allowed to take their pictures, and everything was, all of the pictures were looked at by the court reporters that were there, and the lady from court administration, along with someone from my office and Mr. J. Bender, to make sure that everything was done correctly.
What I'm asking is how you handled having them, the press, view these exhibits.
If I remember correctly, the press, we had certain designated photographers, and then someone, I think, from the state of or the Post and Courier, and they were responsible for putting it out on a stream for the rest of the media to
And
access.
would they do that by photographing the exhibits as they were in your possession after court was over that day?
That is correct.
All right. And how did you handle the sealed exhibits in terms of their availability when these press people are there photographing exhibits?
They stayed sealed.
And so you think that you're aware of the fact that some of these on-the-scene photographs of the two decedents found their way into the public press. You're aware of that, are you not?
Yes, ma'am, I am, yes.
And you contend that they photographed them in the courtroom?
That is what I heard.
All right. Finally, you have indicated about your book that some things that you put in there were, you called it literary license, not literally true, correct?
Correct.
Did you ever, by any kind of email communication or in any way, shape, or form, indicate or state that you wanted a guilty verdict because it would increase the sales of the book? Did you ever say that in an email or verbally or in any other way?
No, ma'am, I did not. It didn't matter to me if it was guilty, not guilty, or a mistrial.
Well, in your book, you suggest that the guilty verdict was what you wanted, and you were fearful that that a guilty verdict would not be rendered. You say that a lot about your feeling about wanting a guilty verdict, do you not?
I do agree that that is said in the book, and part of that is because I think it was a guilty verdict.
Well, this is that you were describing a time way before the verdict was rendered. When you wrote about those things in the book. Isn't that correct?
It is, yes.
And you even have something where you say your eyes met with jurors and others at Moselle, and y'all had an understanding, unspoken, that he was guilty. You said that in the book, did you not?
I did say that in the book, and I would consider that part of the literary, the word that we just said. But there was nothing spoken with a juror at all at Moselle or anywhere else at the courthouse or anywhere. I think that's part of that poetic license that we write to make something more apparent. But at no time did I read or try to read someone else's eyes, and that was just one of those gut feelings that I wrote in the book.
you wrote in the book, speaking of a time before the jury verdict was rendered, I was conflicted about knowing the Murdaugh family and about having so many people watching and listening to me as I read the verdict. I was mostly concerned about Alex being found innocent when I knew in my heart he was guilty. I had this fear that the goodwill the Murdaughs had built up in the community would influence the jury. You wrote that, did you not?
Yes, ma'am.
So you had those feelings well before the verdict was announced in this case. You had some definite opinions and feelings about what the verdict should be, did you not?
I did have a certain way that I felt.
And
But I would
wasn't
never...
that's not any poetic license, what was said there. That's how you felt, correct?
Correct.
All right. Those are my questions. Anything further from the state, Mr. Waters?